Have you ever been in a room with someone, yet felt completely invisible? You ask a question and there is no answer. You walk into the kitchen and they walk out. There is no shouting. In fact, there is no sound at all. This is the silent treatment. In psychology, the focus is on emotional withdrawal as a reaction to conflict. While it's often seen as a passive behavior, research shows it's one of the most intense ways to impact another person's sense of safety. Today, we are breaking down why silence can feel louder than words, what happens in the brain's processing centers when we are ignored, and why this silent tactic is actually a complex form of social exclusion. In our current social world, we see this happening not just in person, but digitally, through ghosting or leaving someone on read for days as deliberate choice. But to understand why this hurts, we have to look at the biology. First, it's important to distinguish between two very different behaviors. Sometimes people need time out to cool down during a stressful moment. They might say, I need 20 minutes to think before I say something I regret. That is a healthy strategy called self-regulation. It's proactive and it has an endpoint. But the silent treatment is different. It's a tactical withdrawal. In psychology studies, this is analyzed as a way to maintain a position of power without open confrontation. The goal isn't to fix the problem. The goal is to create a situation where the other person feels pressured to fix the silence. In psychology, the focus is on clusters. One moment of quiet might not mean much, but a pattern of these behaviors happening at the same time tells a deeper story. Usually, we see three things. The sudden cutoff. Communication stops without a clear explanation or a timeout agreement. The loss of body language. The person avoids eye contact, stops nodding, and physically turns away. The conditional return. Communication only resumes once the other person has apologized or conceded, regardless of who was actually at fault. When these three happens together, it's no longer about needing space, it's about creating emotional vacuum. Why does it feel so heavy when someone stops talking to us? Research using neuroimaging like fMRI shows something fascinating about how our brains are wired. When a person is intentionally ignored, a specific part of the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex is activated. Interestingly, this is the same area responsible for detecting sensory discomfort and emotional distress. To the human brain, being socially excluded triggers a high-level alert signal. This goes back to our basic survival instincts. For our ancestors, being cast out from the tribe meant that survival was nearly impossible. We are biologically programmed to need social connection to feel safe. When someone close to you removes that connection without warning, your brain treats it as a critical emergency. It triggers a state of hyper-vigilance, where you become obsessed scanning the other person's face for any sign of a thaw in the eyes. In social psychology, this form of exclusion is often called ostracism. It's unique because of what it doesn't do. When someone shouts at you, they are still engaging with you, but silence is a withdrawal of that acknowledgement. Behavioral science suggests that this behavior directly attacks four fundamental human needs. The first one, belonging. The feeling of being kicked out of the relationship. In psychology, the focus is on our biological need for a secure base. When the silent treatment starts, that base is gone. You are physically there, but emotionally, you are being treated as an outsider in your own life. It creates a deep sense of isolation that no amount of physical presence can fix. The second one, control. The frustration of being locked out of the negotiation. In a normal conflict, you can speak, defend yourself, or apologize, but there, the exit door is welded shut. You feel unable to resolve the situation because there is no dialogue. This lack of agency often leads to high levels of anxiety, as you are forced to wait for the other person to decide when you are allowed to exist again. The third one, self-esteem. The internal questioning of your own value. When someone refuses to acknowledge your words, your brain starts to fill in the silence with negative self-talk. You might think, am I so unimportant that I don't even deserve a response? Or is my voice then meaningless? The silence acts as a mirror that reflects a distorted, diminished version of yourself. Next one, meaningful existence. Its feeling of becoming invisible. This is perhaps the most profound impact. In social psychology, we look at how being ignored makes a person feel like they have no social weight. If you speak and no one hears, or if you walk into a room and no one looks up, your brain begins to process this as a loss of social existence. Its state of being socially dead while still being in the room. Let's look at a common everyday example. Imagine you have had a minor disagreement over a text message, maybe about plan that changed or small misunderstanding. Instead of addressing it, the other person suddenly goes dark. They see your messages, but they don't reply. You see them online, but you are effectively blocked in real life. When you finally see them in person, the atmosphere is freezing. They look right through you as if you are a stranger. At this point, the focus shifts. The original misunderstanding about the plans doesn't matter anymore. What matters is the emotional wall they have built. This is where the cycle of phoning begins. You might find yourself over apologizing for things you didn't even do, or sending peace offering messages just to get a single word of acknowledgement. You aren't trying to solve the original problem anymore. You are trying to prove that you still exist in their world. To understand the pattern, we must look at the why behind the behavior. Often the person using silence isn't doing it out of a conscious desire to be bad. Frequently, it's a maladaptive coping mechanism. Many people use silence because they lack the emotional tools to express anger or disappointment safely. They might have grown up in an environment where shouting was dangerous, so they learned that silence was a safer way to show they were hurt. This creates a profound communication breakdown, where both sides are reacting to a threat, but in completely opposite ways. The initiator. Often, they aren't trying to be cruel. They are using a defense mechanism called avoidant coping. They might feel they are keeping the peace by not yelling, but in reality, they are creating a Cold War environment that is just as stressful. By withdrawing, they have regained a sense of safety and control an overwhelming emotional situation. However, the control comes at a high cost. Because the exit door to this conflict is welded shut, you are left in state of high anxiety. It completely shuts down the possibility of a resolution, leaving the underlying conflict to escalate and intensify. The receiver. On the other side, the person being ignored is forced into a state of intense emotional labor without any feedback. Their brain goes into overdrive trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. They are left guessing what went wrong and how to fix it, often leading to the state of a hypervigilance. They might start phoning, over apologizing, or becoming excessively helpful just to break the tension. This constant state of uncertainty is exhausting and can lead to significant drop in self-worth, as they feel their presence is only acknowledged when they are in total compliance. Before we wrap up, I have one final piece of advice. if you are currently the one being ignored. It's crucial to realize that this silence is a reflection of the other person's internal struggle with conflict. It's not a reflection of your worth as a human being. When the exit door is constantly welded shut, the healthiest move might be to stop knocking. You cannot fix a relationship where the other person refuses to participate. Sometimes, walking away is the only way to protect your peace and your self-esteem. Understanding these verbal signs and digital mind games is how we begin to set healthy boundaries. You deserve a connection where problems are solved with words, not with emotional hunger. Well, the question then becomes, how do we break this destructive cycle? The focus should always be on moving from withdrawal to productive communication. If you recognize this pattern in your own behavior, the first step is realizing that silence, while it feels safe in the short term, eventually erodes the foundation of trust. True resolution requires the courage to speak and the patience to listen. Understanding these patterns, whether it's the verbal signs of digital deception or the weight of emotional withdrawal, is how we begin to navigate our social world with more authentic agency. I'm Jaromir. Thanks for watching. Stay curious. And if you are ready to look deeper into the human mind, subscribe to Jaromir's sessions. See you in the next one.